on Facebook Live. I was just talking to Marcus Aurelius Anderson, and when we came out of the Facebook Live, I don't know if this is a movie that you're familiar with, but I think it was called Inception, Philippe. And it was like when they were in a dream within a dream within a dream, and it's like now we're in the Facebook Live. So hey, everybody out there. This is going to be amazing interview. I'm looking forward to this. And then we're going to be like ready to talk with the recorder button on. And then when that's done, we got to still remember that we don't just get out of that, but then we've got to have a private conversation. If I'm a respectful host, I'm going to, have a nice couple of minutes private conversation with Philippe here, and I'm going to get off of Facebook Live. And so that's like the kick, and then the other level of the kick, and then we're then we're finally back to a private conversation. Okay. So just a little too meta, I think, but maybe not for you, but for me, for sure. So any questions before we actually go super live on the recorder here, or you got up, so it's the time to do that.
Just put on a shirt if we're going to
putting on a shirt. Yeah. Hey, it's just really all about being casual and comfortable, and this is really it's an audio based podcast. However, right. Since you're taking the trouble to block out part of your day and everything, I'm like, anything that I can do to give my guests the option of additional assets, especially visual ones, that other people can get excited about sharing and spreading the message. That's what we're really here to do. So I think we're good to go. We've got the audio levels are decent. I'm pronouncing your name correctly because you haven't corrected me on any of that stuff yet.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I did spell your name wrong on the title here because you have 2 L's in Philippe, so I'm just going to apologize. I'm going to apologize already. Well, no, I'm going to correct it because darn it, I'm
Philippe.
2 L's, 2 P's.
No, 1 L, 2 P's.
1 L, 2 P's. Okay, so it's wrong in my spreadsheet.
Oh, is it?
No, it's not. It's not wrong in my spreadsheet. I need to be using my glasses. Yeah, so with the eyes on the other side of the L in your name and my bad eyes, I thought I had it down wrong, and it's actually good everywhere. So everybody else who is in their 40s like me is laughing at me hilariously. All right, enough said. It's time. Any questions before I hit the button?
No, it's good. That's good.
All right, we're good to go. Okay, so and we did the onboarding, we did the reverse, the micro onboarding. We are ready to go. All right, we are live in 3, 2. We are live with PhilippeNoel. Philippe, are you ready to talk?
I am. Good to be here.
PhilippeNoel is a social entrepreneur originally from Quebec, Canada. While a freshman at Harvard University or Harvard College, he gave a TEDx talk on biomethanation, a technology he researched to create a social enterprise. Philippe formed Methergenics to expand the reach of this technology. PhilippeNoel, welcome to the talk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Your talk, TEDx Harvard talk, is called How Your Leftovers Could Fuel Your Car. And I know this is a little out of your age bracket, but my favorite movie of all time came out when I was 10 years old, Back to the Future. And at the end of that show, after the end of the movie, they come flying in from the future, and Doc opens up the hood and starts doing exactly what it sounds like you're onto here. Started opening up the fuel tank, dumping in all of Marty McFly's bio waste from his trash and fueling up the car and then flying back away. This is your opportunity to correct me if I'm completely wrong or setting this up in the wrong direction, but I just got to send you off with that as the intro. It's how your leftovers could fuel your car. So take us behind the talk, Philippe.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm working on is a little less glamorous than what you just described, but essentially that's kind of the same thing. So just to give you like a brief rundown of what I spoke about. So basically, biomethanation is this technology where you can take organic waste and transform it into biogas, and then you can use this biogas to fuel the car. And what's so great about the system is that part of the waste that comes from this process of transforming the biogas can actually be used as fertilizer. So it's essentially a zero waste system. Everything that comes out of here is just and can entirely be used. So you're kind of like, closing the circle in a sense and making a fully sustainable system, which is great. So when I was in high school, I researched which diets and which, composition of waste produce the most biogas and could be the more potent for just fueling cars and, producing the most quantity of biogas. And then at the talk, that's kind of what I talked about briefly, but I was trying to keep it, not too scientific and more talk about the future of the technology and what it could potentially bring to society. Trying to get people a bit more inspired about this technology because it's not so used, it's not so known either, and it's kind of, like working with waste is not such a, glamorous field, and so not so many people talk about it while there's so much you can do to improve this process. So this is basically what I was talking about.
Well, it sounds like exactly what what I was watching in the movie when I was 10 years old. So, I mean, it may not be, presented in the same little snazzy way, but you're talking about feeding biofuels or the waste that we're putting in our landfill. I mean, it's like a triple win. You save on gas. You have a car that runs on this stuff. You get to look like you're Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox on Back to the Future. And there's no waste. You're saying that it's organic when it comes out the other end.
Right.
That's amazing. How far along are you? I mean, are you is this kind of theoretical right now, or are you making advances, or just give us a little bit of a timeline and feel free to adjust my very, very high expectations that I have, Philippe.
I mean, it's already being used. So it might even have, your expectations should be higher.
Should be higher?
Yeah, so this technology is actually already used. It's not so used in the United States, unfortunately,
well, of
but
course
where I'm
not
from
here,
in Canada,
yeah.
It's a pretty big deal. It's also very much used in Germany and France. It's mainly used it's not used right now so much for cars. A lot of what the biogas is used for is for trucks and used for heating buildings. And it's also very much used, at least at the moment, in a agricultural kind of setting. So, farms, of course, produce a lot of organic waste. So they're a good place to start to have a very large quantity of, input for your system in the same location. But it's starting to be more and more used on like smaller city levels. One of the reasons I suspect it's not so used in the US is because the waste management system is a bit more individualistic versus, France and Canada where it's all run by the state. So it's a little easier for, an entire city to switch to this kind of way of doing things. Well, it's a little harder to do it.
Instant adoption. I mean, if you've got that kind of centralized system, I mean, I was always kind of grew up, and we're mostly very capitalistic society in the United States and Canada. So that's a great way to look at it. On the other side, one of the great things about having things centralized is it can be potentially more environmentally sound. So I'm just bouncing off the walls with this. How long? I'm going to ask you to, kind of make a prediction here. What do you think? Who's going to be the next industry or segment to adopt this, and where do you see this going, Philippe?
I mean, I think it's probably going to be everywhere at some point, just because it has to, right? Like, if we want to keep society evolving in the future, we got to find a moment where we reuse everything we make, right? And this is, at least so far, the best known way of reusing organic waste. So it will eventually get more and more widely spread out. As for exactly when, that's a really good question. I don't know exactly. I would say the general tendency is to move towards slowly implementing it in institutions that have a lot of waste on their own, so that, make like a single client kind of a big deal and makes it profitable for them. So in the US, starting to go with college campuses where you have, 30,000 people under the same institution, or like a business headquarters or something like that, small cities and so on. I think it's going to continue to develop more in Western Europe and Canada for now, and it's slowly, like, getting more talked about in New England, also a bit on the West Coast, northern part of the West Coast, and I think it's going to kind of, like, spread out from there.
Yeah, well, I would wonder in like Silicon Valley, like Apple headquarters, I mean, what an easy thing if they're not already doing this to raise awareness and the cool factor and, make your employees feel happy and all of that. I would imagine I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen at all.
Exactly. It's also that it's a great image for the company, right? Especially in today's time where sustainability has become more and more of an issue, and having a company that just says like, hey, we're going to switch to this, and we're going to be better than all the other companies. And it's also the good thing with all of this, and what I was kind of putting emphasis on in my talk, is that there's also an economically sound reason for doing this. Like all of this biogas that you produce kind of offsets the cost that you're incurring to get the whole process started. And right now it's just entirely cost, because you're spending money to take this waste and just dump it somewhere where it's generating nothing at all, right? And on this side, you're just generating some value out of something that had no value previously. So it can reduce your costs and even be profitable for some companies depending on their system and their efficiency and so on.
Well, I can't imagine what future generations, they're going to look back on us and they're going to say, hey, you guys lived 100 years after the Industrial Revolution. You kept producing, waste upon waste, and then you wasted waste to take care of the waste. And I just love that there are brilliant young minds like Philippe that are finally doing something about the issue. I'm gonna put a plug for many of the environmentally friendly talks that we've had here on Be the Talk. One of our most popular, number one or number two, episode 25 with Leah Colabella, who takes on that issue of single-use disposable straws. And she, through her talk, was able to help bolster the cause in Charleston, South Carolina, of basically 20 restaurants in the city, basically doing away with plastic straws, due in part because of her talk and the work of other great people. So, Philippe, you're not alone, and there's a lot of environmentally friendly other episodes that we've had. But I think this is just the juiciest one because who could, watch Back to the Future if you had.
Right.
Watch it. This is what we're talking about. It's really, really cool. And really, I mean, environmental friendliness, sustainability is really the new advertising when you think about it. If you're Apple, if you're Starbucks, if you're, whatever the bleeding edge company is out there, and especially if you're in manufacturing, what a better way, instead of interruption-based advertising, old school, that nobody likes anymore, just advertise that you're bio-friendly and that you've closed the waste loop and the energy loop, and powerful stuff. So real powerful points. Anything that you would add to that? I'm going off on a little hijack of the conversation here, Philippe. Anything you'd add to that before we jump over to the Blitz round?
Yeah, I would say maybe one very short thing. When I was given this opportunity to do the TED Talk, I've been working on this technology, and I didn't really think much more about this. I was just, I was like, this is something I think is important, and I cared about it. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. But there was such a great reception from the audience out of everything. There were brilliant people speaking on the stage with me, right? Brilliant professors and so on. And I was the only student speaking at the time. And for some reason, people felt like they connected more with my talk, maybe. And I think it speaks to at least the younger generation, but also, of course, the older generations, but especially the younger generations, care more and more deeply about these issues. And I think it connects with what you just mentioned about this advertising, the fact that it can, it's something that's very important for a lot of people, and connecting it with companies and so on is a great way to not only bring this issue forward, but also help those companies, reconnect with the younger generations.
Well, we've been talking to PhilippeNoel. His TEDx Harvard talk is called How Your Leftovers Could Fuel Your Car. And we're going to be back with him in just a moment for the Blitz Round. And we're back with PhilippeNoel for the Blitz Round. This is where I ask him a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent branded talk. Philippe, are you ready?
I am.
Question number 1. Were you selected to speak or did you apply? I think you already answered this, so tell us again.
I was selected to speak.
All right. I wonder why, because he's got leftovers that can fuel your car. That's amazing. Number 2, are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I would say a blender, yeah.
Yeah, how so?
Sorry, a bit more about it?
Yeah, how so? Or
excuse me.
How did you blend it?
Yeah, I would say I like to have this outline of what I want to talk about. So just like a couple of main points. So, I want to talk about briefly what the technology is doing, the state it is right now, the state it's going to be, and so on. And then when it's something I just know about, I just, go with it the way it comes out.
Philippe, did you have nerves, or were you in the zone, or neither, or both?
Excuse me, can you repeat? I think the connection cut.
Sure, yeah. Did you have nerves, or were you in the zone, or neither, or both?
I guess it's going to be a bit of both. Before the talk, I had nerves, but the second I started, it's just, it just races by. And then, 15 minutes just raced by, and I didn't have any time to think about it.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes by real fast when you're up there. What's a tip, a technique, or a tool that helped you?
Something that I like thinking about was just the fact that no one in the audience knew anything about what I was saying, right? So there's no one that's going to stand up and be like, you're wrong, right? Of course, you don't want to be wrong, but the way you explain everything, you're just sharing something you care about. So you're the expert on the topic. There's really no way it could go wrong. And then you just go and have a good time. All
right, so you gave a critic-proof talk.
I guess.
When does that happen in science? I love it. Hey, this is the cut for time question, Philippe. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Something I couldn't include?
Yeah, something for not enough time for you to be able to talk about.
I mean, it might be a bit of a cliche answer, but I guess a lot of people, and me also, would love to talk more about the technology, kind of the nitty-gritty of what we did and so on. But it's something that, of course, I didn't include, and I think shouldn't be included, because people there are not there to have, a lecture on biomethanation. They're there to have an inspiring, just like overview of what it is. So I think a lot of the most successful talks don't go too much in detail about precisely the technology or the concepts they're talking about, but more about how this connects with people and the society. And I think this is something I would have loved to include more, but something that didn't have its place in the talk.
It's a different type of talk. I mean, it's a lecture, it's whatever. This is a ideas platform. And I really, for what it's worth, Philippe, I really appreciate really scientific minds like yourself. I've had pharmacists on the talk. I've had doctors on the talk. I've had people that could have remained in their little scientific silo and been right, and continue to publish peer-reviewed journals only, but they chose to carve out, in many cases, months of their time to create a bridge and take their expert language and find other simpler words that basically meant the same thing and take that risk of connecting with really the rest of us. So for what it's worth, I really appreciate that you did that. It is a performance. So here's my final question for you. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before you went on stage for your talk?
That's a great question. I would say you can't really know what's going to make people react to the most. Of course, I mean, I had some ideas, not that I'm giving, like a spoken word event or anything, but sometimes when I was bringing, important results or, like surprising results, I would be like, probably this is when people are going to think, oh, this is really cool. But also sometimes you're not even thinking like something that sounds normal to you, and then people are going to react very strongly to this, or like, start applauding or anything. So I'd say this was the most unexpected part of the audience.
Yeah, well, you never know whether you're giving a TEDx talk or you're doing stand-up comedy. and trying out material for the first time, you don't know what's going to land. That's great.
Right.
We've been enjoying this conversation with PhilippeNoel. His TEDx Harvard talk was called How Your Leftovers Could Fuel Your Car. And before we come back to him for the final word of advice for You Talk Universe, if you want to connect with Philippe, you want to watch this talk. You really want to watch this talk. If you've ever seen Back to the Future at the end and wondered, will we ever have a day? We've just been talking about this for the last 15 minutes. You can go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com. There you can have a link to the talk, and you can also connect on LinkedIn with Philippe if you are an investor, if you are an angel investor, if you want to be on the bleeding edge on what is happening, you might just want to link in with PhilippeNoel. You can do that on our show notes page, bethetalk.com. And we will be right back for the final word of advice with PhilippeNoel. And we're back with the final word of advice for Talk Universe with PhilippeNoel.
The final word of advice, I would say, I'm someone who's pretty easygoing, so I don't know if this is going to apply to everyone, but I would say don't stress it out too much, ultimately, all of this is about is just for you to share something you care about with people that want to hear something they haven't heard before. So it's really just a good way of connecting with people. So just, write something that you think is good and prepare the way you think is right for you, and then it's going to go well. There's really nothing to get too caught up about.
PhilippeNoel, thank you so much for taking your valuable time, carving out some time to talk with us on Be the Talk today and sharing your valuable wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap. So we just shut off the recorder, but we are still Facebook Live in the inception. I like thinking in movies. So, hey, you guys, this was a fun interview here today. So if you have questions about this technology, I should be, Philippe hasn't linked in with me yet or Facebook with me yet, but he'll be able to find this on my wall. If you still have a question about this, just post your question, even if we're not live right now, and I'm sure Philippe will answer the question. This might be the only chance you ever have to have this kind of expert advice, Talk Universe. All right. Thank you so much. Whoever the thumbs up is, thank you so much. And, help Philippe share the word and spread the word. If you believe that you're sick and tired of all of this waste and why can't there be a better way, maybe there is a better way. So share this video. Take care, everybody. I'm going to go offline and talk with Philippe now. Take care.